How's camp going?
Really, I mean, for me personally, I'm a bit banged up, but otherwise, the group
okay?
at large.
Sick?
Yeah, I had flu. Now I've got back issues.
Oh, you too?
As long as they stay healthy, it's all wonderful to me.
You'll trade a ligament or two to make
Was
sure.
Was it the power clean, the heavy squat? What did we do?
I don't know. I think it was just sleeping.
That's not a good sign. What are you most excited about as you tour around and watch these guys?
I think the depth that we've been able to create, going into this spring stands out the most. It's such a fun group. A lot of those guys in the bullpen that are competing for spots, guys like Jackson Kowar, Colin Snyder, Carlos Vargas, Joey Kreibel, Ty Buttrey. They've been excellent, and that's been a positive. I think every day our pitching runs out there. I think this should work. And I love the depth of the lineup and the way we see those guys start to assimilate, the Jorge Polancos, the Luke Rayleys, the Uriases, the guys who've come in and joined the group seem to have done so pretty seamlessly.
How much tape do you and Justin and I know the guys that are filming it, how much tape do you go and watch over the course of a day this time of year?
We don't really watch what they're filming. We're watching past. So, we'll go into our database, and a lot of times when we are seeing guys, or considering acquiring a player, we'll dig into our video database and look that way. What they're doing now, especially the Edgertronic video, is really valuable to our pitching coaches.
Okay.
I watch the Edgertronic video and I think that's cool. I let the experts tell me, why it's so cool.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the pitching and seeing the starters run out there every day, and it's Luis, and then it was George, and then it was Logan, and today it's Bryce. How relieved? I'm sure it was hard at times in the moment as people are calling for you and saying, "Hey, what if we gave you this for Bryce? Or what about this for Brian? Or what about this for Logan?" And I'm sure there are some tempting moments. But as you sit here today and you roll those guys out 1 through 5, how happy are you that you did what you did?
Thrilled, And I would add to that, Emerson Hancock, who I'm certain that someone has said it to you guys so far, looks fabulous this spring and just a little different version of Emerson. But the pitching is what we've been about. We said when we spoke in January, we're going to lean into doing what we do. And this is what we do. And I think it's our personality. It suits our ballpark. And, I'm really glad that those guys are here. A lot of times when you go through those conversations, something might pique your interest, and then you think, but, the void that it leaves and the thing that we know we do best is just too big to embrace.
Compare and contrast for me, if you wouldn't mind, Jerry, how different this spring training is than your spring trainings as a player in the 80s and 90s.
In our spring trainings in the 80s and 90s, we will already have been in 2 hours of sweat. And, the workout started really early. You spent a ton of time on the field, on your feet. Now the work is so much more defined. Everything it's efficient, it's well planned out, it's on a clock, and we're not trying to bring players back from an off season of slumber and work them into shape. They come here and they're ready to go, and that's the biggest difference.
So you guys were out like running and calisthenics and stretching, like everything on the field.
Oh yeah,
by 9:30
easily. I mean, I can remember with Cleveland in my early years with Cleveland. We, as the pitching staff, we would start at 8 a.m. We would go on a 3-mile run, and we had all these various courses and. And there was somebody there with a stopwatch, and then when you got back from the run, you went in and put your uniform on, and then you started the baseball practice.
Wow.
And by contrast, I watched literally 20 people watch Bryce Miller throw a bullpen the other day.
Which is a way better outcome than running the seashell course at 8 a.m. in Winter Haven, Florida.
Well, but it does sort of speak to one of the – it's interesting you bring it up, and it sort of speaks to why Scott has this basketball hoop up here, I would think, because if you don't have the bonding moment of going through hell and all these workouts and all that stuff together, you got to find a different way for the team to bond and to get to like each other.
I think one of the real cool things about our spring training, and this goes back 8 years now, and what Scott and the staff have done to create a culture of togetherness in the clubhouse. It's the get-to-know-you factor with new guys that walk in, and it's the ability just to close the door and let your guard down. And I think that familiarity or, even the entertainment value, every morning you're going to hear the laughter in that room, and it kind of really reverberates through the entire complex. You can hear it everywhere, upstairs, downstairs, and the like. And that's what it's about, is bringing a team together.
And again, to compare and contrast, you guys in your Rocky sweatsuits and your gray suits, sweating and running. Could you ever imagine your managers back in the day coming to visit you?
No.
Flying to you, coming to be transparent with you and where everything is going? I mean, once again, just a totally different era.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the idea of just establishing communication, being, having intimate relationships with your players, developing that trust. And, at the end of the day, you will not help anyone get better if they don't trust you.
When do you think that turning point was? Like, you've been in baseball now for all of this, right? You've seen the whole spectrum of it, and you've been in the baseball ops side now for so long and president. When do you think that turn started to happen? Like, I think of football, Pete Carroll was a catalyst at USC.
Yeah.
He was a game changer. He played freshman. He connected with young people. He played music at practice. And now you see 20 years later all of these practices that
Is there one person who's most responsible for that shift?
If I had to point to a person who made it popular, I would say it was Joe Madden. If I look back in his early days with Tampa and what they did in creating uniqueness in an environment before anybody else was really doing anything like that. If I had to point to a fire starter, that might be it. And so many of the managers today, they're young. They're young. They're closer in age to the player pool than managers have ever been before. And I think that helps too, is they communicated in a different way in their era than maybe the guys that we played for back in the 90s were probably a little crustier. They were a little further removed from their careers.
And they were probably even less crusty than the guys they had played for.
No doubt about
right?
that.
I mean, I've heard some of those stories. Tito used to tell stories of the guys that he played for, and it just sounds like they were terrified every minute of the experience that something was going to happen. So, yeah, it's a pretty amazing evolution. To come back to this team, Jerry, and your job as the architect, along with Justin, do you feel like you accomplished what you were hoping to this offseason?
I think we did, and I used the word yesterday. It was kind of a meandering off season. It started out slow and in many ways painful, and we did what we needed to do for the first 2 months to be able to do what we were able to do for the last 2 months. And I think the fact that it worked in the order it did, we learned some lessons. We learned the value of being patient through the market in a way that we never really have before. We usually are more aggressive on the front end. Mm-hmm. This year we were more aggressive on the back end. We knew where our holes were and what we wanted to fill them with, and in order to do that, we had to be patient enough to let the market develop, and that worked to our advantage. And then opportunities, really, the persistence in waiting out Minnesota on acquiring Polanco, the ability to go out and get Gregory Santos there at the end, I think was a big add for us. Signing Mitch Garver on Christmas Eve. I think from Christmas Eve forward, the momentum we gained, both in how you look at our roster and how our players viewed our roster and creating the vibe since we got here. If we would have walked in to start spring training, in mid-November, there might not have been as good a vibe here as we're feeling today.
I heard this phrase the other day, and I thought it was a nice way of looking at your third base as a position of potential vulnerability. That's not bad. It's not to say that the guys who are there aren't major leaguers, and you certainly have a couple of players, maybe even 3 or 4 players who played in the majors at that spot. But comparatively, I like the phrase vulnerability. Is that an accurate way of describing it? Do you have thoughts on kind of where you're at third base?
Yeah, I like our situation at third base. They're both guys who've been successful major league players. If you combine each of their best seasons, you got about a 5.5 win player, that's no joke. And they just do it in a slightly different way. And I think you look around, some of in the baseball world, you're not going to have an all-star solution at every position on the field or in the roster. And I think that is when there are no games being played, and you think as a broader baseball community, they can go get such and such. Yeah, but then you're taking away from the advantage that it provides you in versatility and flexibility and depth. Because if you have Rojas, you have Urias, you have Dylan Moore, you have guys like this on your team, now you're protecting yourself. If Jorge Polanco needs some time down, one can rotate over because they can all do that. If somebody misses considerable time, you're not backfilling by going down to the minor league and getting someone who's largely unproven. you're bringing in players who have had success at the major league level. And that kind of depth built into a 26-man roster is really valuable over a 162-game season.
We don't know exactly what that 26-man will be looking like. We have another month.
I'm sorry, I just want to finish on third base real quick, just because we saw Ty France over there the other day, and these things happen in spring training. I don't mean to read too much into it, but he's a lot slimmer. He looks a little bit more like a third baseman than he did at any other point during his time here. Is there any chance we could see Ty maybe move around the diamond a little bit?
Yeah, I guess there's always a chance, and it's one thing that we've always done, and this developmentally from the minor leagues to the major leagues. All of our outfielders play all the positions. The infielders move around. We try to give them the various exposures because you never know what's going to happen during the course of a season. And some of the things that have been impressive in this early going, one is the physical condition of Ty France. He looks incredibly athletic right now, and I mentioned it to him. He did the work this offseason, and Perry Hill's always believed in him as a third baseman. So giving him the opportunity to rotate over there, it just like I talked about with the flexibility with guys like Rojas, Urias, Moore, etc. If Ty France fits into that bucket, all the better for us. Polanco is also a guy who can go play third base. He's got second. He's played a little first. Having that type of versatility really provides depth before you even get to the next layer of player.
Pretty awesome. Jerry Dipoto here with us. Julio last hour was just unbelievable.
Not a shock.
Oh, my God. It's just a terrific guy on so many different levels.
Can you acquire some more Julios?
We're trying.
Is there a Julio tree where you just go get more Julios and bring them in and allow them to play for you?
I've heard they don't grow on them.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, he's a special guy.
Oh, gosh, he's
not
amazing.
just the talent, but the person.
Awesome. I think Salk was looking at the 26-man, and again, this could change. And the next month, who knows? A lot of games between now and setting that roster. But there's a strong possibility that all 26 guys will have major league experience. Not one guy will have come into it just 0 innings played in the major leagues. Was that intentional?
Not intentional. I do think that the value of a roster that has some experience where you're not throwing anybody in the deep end of the pool, there is value there. Mm-hmm. There's also, if I look back over the last 3 years when we've been generally pretty successful on the field, every year we've introduced new talent that's effectively impacted our season in positive ways. And this year I think there is a group that is Cole Young, that is Tyler Locklear, guys who haven't played in the big leagues yet who we think will have some impact. And they may get here as early as this season, but I don't think that we're currently planning on them being there on opening day.
Yeah.
It's a good group, and we're very confident in the depth and the quality of the roster. Now we just got to hope they stay healthy.
That opening day roster probably is going to have 12 to 14 players that were not on it last year. Now, they may have come during the year, whether it's Bryce Miller or Brian Wu, those types of guys, but weren't on the opening day roster last year. That's 50% turnover, roughly. Does it feel that way? I mean, it's funny. When it doesn't feel like it's been all at once. They've been sort of gradual, but that's like a very different-looking team than it was this time last year.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And some of it is just wanting to look at our offense in a little different way. Some of it was through necessity. We did have holes to fill because guys went away. And some of it was the graduation of young players last year that really they stepped in and forced you to adjust the roster to accommodate their presence. Guys like Bryce and Wu really stand out in that way. So I'm fired up about the way our roster looks right now. I think the team feels the same way, and I think we were good on paper when last season started. I like this team at least that much, if not, the depth makes me feel even a little more bullish on it.
You referenced the offensive philosophy. I remember walking into physics lab, summer school at UW, and I was like, I don't belong here. I just don't. I'm not understanding any of this. Like, it is way over my head. I am curious if you walk down the hallway at times or poke your head in and listen to Brandt Brown talk with the analytics guys and the movement guys and some of that stuff that all of it goes into it. Do you find yourself like, all right, I'll just leave you guys to do that because this is. I had the conversation with him yesterday. I was like, you can really think about all that. You can really process all that information. I think offensively, that addition of Brandt's going to be kind of unique, huh?
Yeah, and we've had Brandt before,
right.
So we knew what we were getting when we sat down with him in Arizona, interviewed him to come back here, and he was, he like a trade acquisition, he was a pursuit of ours, where he already had a job as a major league hitting coach, and we targeted him as someone who we thought could really help. And Brownie's great skill is not just that he can think in that way, that he can process, the analysis. It's that he sees it, and he's able to take that information, what he sees, and the data that he knows, and translate it for a player in a way that a player understands. And he's got a different message based on the ears that are hearing it. Nothing about what he's doing is just cookie cutter. It's defined for each player.
And that is
he's the
different.
comic relief.
Yeah.
That's what he told. He told us he was.
He's
the
got a
comic
little of
relief.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
He's got a little of that.
We didn't see it necessarily in our few minutes with him, so I'm glad to hear it's there.
But we talk about this cyclical nature, whether it's managers and treatment, whether it's training, whether it's running in the 80s, the Sands and everything else. Because for a lot of years, Jerry, it's like, well, what's a hitting coach? It's not a hitting coach. Oh, you can fire the hitting coach. It's all about the – I'm like, no, I would think that that's an important aspect of it, and especially if one is maybe unique or attacks it in a way that is different than some of the others or some guys through the years were like, well, just a hitting coach. What can he really do? How much can he really impact? Sure feels like this guy can make an impact. And his track record, if you pursued him, tells you he's made an impact.
Oh, there's no doubt. And a lot of the programs we run today that we implemented starting back in 2016, Brownie was there at the ground level, and he knows what it's about. And like we've done on the pitching end, you want to create a mix. Jarrett DeHart is a wonderful hitting coach, and he's excellent with swings, technical swings, working with hitters on positioning their hands, the way their body moves, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Brownie's got a little bit of that. He's also got a little bit of the ability to bring a message to life for the players. And similarly on the pitching side, we've been able to do that with guys like Trent Blank and Pete Woodworth and previously Max Wiener and now Matt Pierpont. They're all of those voices, they each have their niche, and at the end of the day what you're trying to do is provide this suite of options that have the ability to help one of your 200 players, and I feel like we do right now.
Having spent a little time in management and managing people, and thankfully I don't do it anymore because very, very difficult. One of the things that I found hard was to listen to people, especially the people that you're managing. And we heard from some of the players on this team at the end of last year. And I think a lot of the focus at the time was on was on the personnel level of that. But in listening to Shannon, she was the one who got this most right then, and I credited her yesterday, and Cal agreed with us. He was also saying that there was some strategy that he felt like could be different. And it seems anyway as if there is a little different strategy. There is a little different thought towards not just looking for home runs, not that you're running away from analytics, but that you're embracing some – I don't want to call it gut, but something beyond just the analytical realm. How impactful was that, and how different do you think we'll find it this year?
I feel like we've always embraced both sides of that spectrum, I guess. And in the hitting space, and I think this is, part and parcel why Brandt Brown is part of the Mariners again, is that the information that we have, the ability to disseminate, the ability to teach in technical ways was always there. The ability to bring that to life, as part of an in-game strategy was an area where we were a little bit short. And we identified it, and we went and got Brownie. And I know talking to Cal in the offseason, I think he may have been the first of our players who encountered Brownie after we hired him. And immediately we got very positive feedback from Cal, and, I think this is going to really help. And I think that may have been what he was alluding to is I don't think any single person in our group has ever questioned our pitching programs. Yeah. And, that's because we had people who could communicate, people who could disseminate, people who could identify. And I think adding Brandt Brown really helps to solidify that hitting group in a similar way.
Last year when we were talking and we could all see our breath and it was really chilly, I went back and looked at my notes from last year, and you mentioned, because I asked you the question, hey, who are some guys we got to keep an eye on? Who are some of those that are not named? Robbie Ray and Marco Gonzalez. And
I guess Brian Wu was on that list.
Wu was on that llist last year. If Mariners fans come here and flood the desert and get out of the rain for the next month, and they want to see maybe a couple of these young guys that, hey, you're going to want to keep an eye on him, because behind the scenes or some of the numbers and some of the things that you're looking at, this guy is really starting to accelerate. Who are a couple of those younger pieces?
I think that in this camp on the major league side, the two most notable I just mentioned were Tyler Locklear and Cole Young. I think people will be stunned when they see Tyler Locklear and his all-around ability. It's not just thump. He can hit. He's got an approach. He plays good defense. He can throw. He is physical and looks like a future middle of the order bat for us. Cole Young is just as advertised. It's contact, it's baseball feel. He's got a lot of baseball IQ, and he's growing into his strength in such a way that the contact skill is going to translate to some power. And if you're coming down from Seattle and you want to spend some time in the sun, when coming out of the clubhouse, I would take a right turn and go to the back fields.
Yeah.
What we have happening right now at the low levels of our system is special. 2 years ago we were regarded as one of the top farm systems in the league, one or two, based on who was doing the rankings. We have more talent in our system now than we did then. They're all at A-ball, and I think as they start to matriculate through the system, we will rise in terms of that recognition. But there is so much young talent, especially some of the bats.
So Everett this year, right? Is that where a lot of these guys? So who?
Yeah, Modesto and Everett.
Get your season tickets now.
Well, you may want to, seriously, especially in Everett. It's a little harder to get to Modesto from Seattle, but we're going to see where will Celestine be this year?
There's all of these guys are likely to between
those
Modesto
two.
and Everett. Is Celestin, it's Colt Emerson, it's Johnny Farmello, it's Ty Pete, it's Laz Montes. There is such a group that's coming through. We feel like it's maybe 10 deep with position players that have a chance to be impact major leaguers.
We watched some of those guys taking grounders off the wall here, and
Felnine's built different.
He's built a little
so
different.
is Emerson. I mean, they're just
What,
physically.
can you tell me I know last year he was just kind of showing up. Who is this kid, and why does he look like that? He looks unbelievable.
I don't think he was here.
Yes.
I don't think he was here, right, with Visa.
He wasn't here, right? Yeah, we didn't even get a chance to see him.
He got here the last day. I was
Right.
actually getting in my car driving back to Seattle the day that he arrived, and we had very high hopes for Felny when we signed him. He hits every box. He can run, he can throw, he's a switch hitter, he has power, he looks like a guy, and he spent his off season between HP camp and coming off of what were some just unfortunate fluky lower body injuries that held him off the field for a lot of last year. When he did come back and play in a non-sanctioned league, we call it the Tricky League in the Dominican, he raked. When he came here, he raked. Right now, he's raking, and there's a different sound off his bat. When you watch him take infield, you feel like you're watching the way it should look, and special talent. And I feel the same way about Colt. Colt does it in a more workmanlike way.
Ohio.
Colt is a dude.
He got big.
Yeah,
he got bigger.
He put on maybe 25 pounds of muscle. It's he's 215.
Same.
He looks fabulous.
Yeah, same. Put on 25 pounds of muscle. It's no big deal.
Bulk mode.
Yeah, just in bulk mode. Well, Jerry,
we could do
that
this
went
all
too
day.
fast. That was very quick.
Yeah.
We sit here and talk about this group all day. We're having a lot of fun.
Fun players.
And we didn't even get a chance to talk about some of the new guys who've come in with Mitch and Jorge a little bit, and having Haniger back has been cool. His smile has been pretty infectious in there.
I think I mentioned this to you when we last spoke.
You did.
Even when calling Mitch after the trade to bring him back, you could tell he was happy. And I don't think he ever really wanted to leave. The fact that he's able to come back and play in a place where he feels comfortable, that it's home, and there's such a respect for Mitch in our clubhouse that his kind of re-entry was seamless. And right now he's playing exceptionally well, and I'm thrilled with the way it's turned out, both from an emotional perspective and from physically what's happening on the field.
Pretty darn cool. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll let you get back to the Julio tree and see if you can just find a couple more Julios hanging out and bring them in here to help out. But what an interesting offseason it's been, and we're looking forward to seeing this product out on the field starting at the end of March. Thank you.
You got it, guys.
There
We're
you go.
nothing if not interesting.
There's Jerry Dipoto. We'll be right back. Brock and Salk, Seattle Sports on 710.